Hi everyone. So I hope you have followed me through my last video and then now you are good with the classical and interactive reporting in SAP ABAP. So before we move ahead, I also would like to mention here is that this classical and interactive reporting again, as I mentioned earlier, they are like an old concept, classical concept. Nowadays it's not being used that widely, but then it's always better to know the concept because you might get into a project who was implemented long back and then there is a report, maybe a classical or interactive one, but that is still being used for different purposes and then you might need to provide some support. So it's always better to know the concept and then they might also ask few questions on the same in your interview. So the agenda for today's video would be like to discuss on data types, operations on subroutine, ALV report and few events, join statement debugging, operations or internal table. Okay. What we are going to do today is first we will finish the debugging part. Why? Because going forward you might feel that things are getting little complex. So to make it easier, it's always better to know the debugging. So if you can debug your program, you can debug your code, then everything is easy. So what we'll do, first we'll go through the data types in ABAP and then we'll go through the debugging concept so that you can debug your own program. And if in case someone was able to create a classical or an interactive report, he or she will be able to debug it. So coming to data types, we have so many predefined data types in ABAP or SAP. So I'm just going to a data element. If you see, we have a data type char here. I'll go inside now. These are some of the standard data types available in SAP and it can be directly referred in our code. Each data type would come with its length also. So what we can do, we can do an F1 here. Let's see. So now you can also try to create this kind of search hill. You know how to do that, calling that function module, and then I did an F1 here. So it gave me a help, and then if I do a technical information, it will give me some other details like which field, whether it's a screen field, if there is any program involved, or if this is a part of some table. For example, you see here that char, so basically character could be up to 255 length. So here we are just using 18, no decimal places because it's a char character, so no decimal places. But if you are using some numeric or maybe decimal kind of data type, then you have to give some decimal places also, like how many places after decimal. We have integer, that would be like without decimal. We have a language, we have date also, date, unit. So these string it's like it can contain any kind of value in it. So this is very useful. In fact, we need to discuss some of the operations on string also, like reading the pattern, reading the length of a string, something like that. Raw, numc means numeric and character both. So basically it will be a character containing digits or numeric. Currency I told you some time back, right? So it's like if you are giving some kind of value, let's say net value, total value of invoice, you want to store that in your table, then you need to refer it to, basically that is cookie, CUKY. So that is something you need to refer to a particular currency. Currency basically it will be stored as decimal only. So these are some of the things you can do you can just go through, into more details about it. You can Google it out, you'll find more details. So as and when I'll get an opportunity, I'll just call these data types in my reporting. So these are some of the standard data types available. Most widely used would be a numc, that is numeric. We have char, then we have string, and we have integer. These will be used very widely. And then when we are going to go through the operations on internal table, then at that time we will be using these data types very widely. And you also know that we have a table called a structure called as YST. This structure stores all the system variables at runtime, as I told you earlier, like which date, what is the system date, what is the system time. Basically this is the time zone. We have a field called datum. So this will store the system date, this will store the system time, this will store the username, who is actually executing it. So a lot of things are here. So whenever you want to capture some kind of generic value, you can refer to the structure and you can see if SAP has already provided anything which will help you to capture those values. Time zone, local time, many things you can, host name, current application server, page number, index, and then, yeah, okay, so many things to cover. But so now we know some of the data types in ABAP, and we also know that there is a structure which will capture the system variables at runtime. So while debugging, we will try to see. So we'll remove it from here. And obviously we have a lot of contents available over internet, so obviously you can go through it anytime. But this video will help you to get some concepts, so that whenever you are going through any other material, so you'll be able to understand it quickly and properly. Now we'll go to debugging. And before debugging, one more thing I would like to do here is, I told you about the transactions. So you go here, you do SE38, and then you can run your report. You do SE11, and then you can open a table. SE91, you can see a message. Similarly, in production, which means when this report is finally complete, tested, everything is fine, the output is good, it will be moved to production. We don't expect the users to go to SE38 and give the program name and then execute this report. No, we don't do that. Rather than that, we will try to attach this report to a transaction code, like we attached our table maintenance generator to a transaction code some time back. So come here, create transaction. So the gtest underscore program name, that is my program name. So what I'll do, I'll give a T code like gtest. Short text is our, so whatever you give here, same will display there. And then since this is a report transaction, and as I already told you, the selection screen in the report would be by default saved as a screen number 1000. So it's not a dialog transaction, it's a report transaction. Select this option, hit OK. So okay, gtest already there, gtest1. Okay, program name is this, copy from here, push it here, select all this so that it can support any kind of GUI, save it, put it in the same package, execute. So gtest1 is done now, and you'll see that it's appearing here. So now in new window, if I go and do gtest1, so I'll get the same report which I'm normally getting by doing an SE38 and then executing it. One second. So now you can see both the things are same, but then now we have a T code which can help me to execute the transaction. So sometime in production during something like you are going to handle an issue, and then you know only the T code. So what you can do, you can execute that T code, go to system, go to status. So it will give you the transaction name, the program name, the screen number, everything it will give here. So from here you can pull some of the details. You can do a double click here, it will take you to the program. You can do a double click here, it will take you to the screen. So this is how my screen looks like. We'll just hold it for now. But anyway, just to get a feeling, you can hit on layout. This will come into picture when we are doing the dialog programming. So if someone has already worked on VB.NET or maybe Oracle, they would be having some idea on how to design a screen. This is very similar to that. This is how my screen looks like. This is my checkbox, radio button. We can do it manually. This one is created by the system. You can see that the search help is also attached here. So we'll hold it for now. So next agenda is to debug the report. So as of now, what we do, we go here, we pass some values here, 1017 to 1019. We execute this, we get a report. Now to debug a report, or to debug any program, or to debug any screen, the very simple option, or the very first option that is provided by SAP would be /h. Do a /h, open the screen or open the transaction, do a /h, and then execute your transaction. Now this screen, okay, now this screen is basically our debugger. You can see it's a debugger session open now. So the first thing which I will come here and see is size of RC. Size of RC is 0, means everything is going fine till now. The other thing which I see here is function conversion exit MAT N1 input. So first time it might look awkward, but then what I wanted to tell you is, if you go to the standard field MATNR, if you double click here, you will see this conversion routine here. So we have these conversion exits here. Okay, I think I have not yet discussed the conversion exit. Maybe I'll put it in the agenda. Conversion exits, okay. So this conversion exit or this function module is basically called. Why this is called? Because my report is having this as an input, material as an input. So for now you just understand that system is capturing this and converting this into internal format. We will see some of the internal formats later, but for now, so I know that I am inside this function module because it tells me that it's debugging the function this. So what I can do, whenever you are inside a function module or whenever you are inside a subroutine, which means whenever you are inside a function end function, or whenever inside perform and perform, form and form, then you can do a F7. You'll see the option of F7. F7 means return back. I did an F7. So I came out of that function module. So what system exactly was trying to do is that system was trying to see if the material which was provided as an input is really valid. If not, do we have an internal format of that material? And then if everything goes fine, then it's okay. Now we have four options here. F5, this is my F5. You can use your keyboard also. This is my F6, F7, F8. Now I was talking about the system variable table. So we have the structure called SYST. If you write SYST here, system will recognize it and then it will give the details. Double click here. So you'll see a lot of values are being captured at runtime. So basically, you can see that the operating system is this, system ID is this, database is this, release is this, 700, T code is this, SciUCOM is only is basically when you hit this in the backend there would be a command attached to it so that system can recognize that what exactly you tried to do. So executing this means system would say that it's only ONLI. It also tells me that system date is this. It also tells me that system time is this. It also tells me that system username is this. The program which we are working currently is this program. This is my T code that will be captured in MSGP1. And also there is, okay, this is the host, server host. We also have a field called T code. In that field also, it will capture the T code value. Let's see. Yeah, this. So, okay, what we did actually, we tried to execute this via SE38. Okay, to complete this, to complete the debugging and coming out, what we can do a F8, will come out, you'll see the output. Now, we are going to execute this program via the transaction code. And then calling our variant, again /h. We got this function module. We can do F7, come out of this, so you'll come to your main report. And then if I do SYST, where is that? You can try to find also. Where is T code? Yeah, T code is here, sorry. So now you can see the T code is gtest1. So you can see that this is how accurate this actually at runtime. So what I can do, sy hyphen data, this is the date, time, username. So sometimes what happens, for example, you are debugging a program and then, yeah, we had that, okay, we'll come to that. So we had that function module which actually captures the beginning and end date of the quarter, and then you wanted to modify some values. You can see that you have this change option here, change field content. If you double click here, you can change the date here, you can change the time also like this, you can change the username also. So again, I mean, you may or may not be having the access. If you are not having the access, you need to contact your basis consultant or maybe security consultant. They might be having some roles dedicated to this button, and then it has to be assigned to your profile. Right. think that is also in my agenda. Yeah, this one. So we'll discuss about it. And then so debugging we are doing, but then if it is a remove yeah, background. Now, as I told you earlier, we have the option of F5, F6, F7, F8. So F7 is basically to return from any kind of function module or subroutine or any kind of programming block. F8 is to compile the program and show the output. To compile it in one go. F7 is basically to return. F6 is basically to skip any coding block by processing it, not by just skipping like that, by processing it and then skipping it completely. So we will apply everything here. So what I am doing here now, wherever you can see it's in black color, we can try to see the value of it at runtime. If I double click here, double click here, double click here, wherever you see this symbol, which means if you double click here, you can see a structure kind of thing. Sign. I told you earlier also that in the select option we have various things like include or exclude. Between means between low and high range. Low, high. So, but then what also you can do, because you know that there is some data. So this represents an internal table. Even this also represents an internal table. But then this was declared as an internal table. So by default it tells you that it's a standard table, but then this was declared both as internal table and structure. So to see the contents as an internal table, you do a bracket here, hit enter. So you'll see that it contains one value. This is 0 because till now it's not filled. Now if you double click and you can see the body. So basically this bracket is called the body of structure, and body will contain the data. So now you'll see this data in tabular format, include, between, low, high. And obviously if you want to edit something here, you can do a double click here. You can edit. Now I want to move to my next statement. So what I can do F5. So we know that this is not initial, which means this message should be skipped. So if I do F5, so it's skipped. It's something like interpreter going line by line. Similarly, this. So this is also not initial. You do F5, skipped. Now what you actually saw here is, as of now we are calling the selection screen first. When you run a transaction, so when you run a transaction, selection screen will be called. So add selection screen output. So since this screen is already called, so this event is of no use as of now. So you can see that it's basically returning from here. It's not going to process this. F5. So it actually skipped. So as I told you earlier, this is basically a PBO, process before output, and then obviously we have an output in front of us, which means screen is already loaded. So PBO is of no use. Now only thing which we can do is PAI, which means process after input, and obviously we have given some input on the screen, so system will go directly to this event. So we know that this value is not X, which means this is not selected. So we can, if I press F5, it will be skipped, which is okay. Again, see, now start of selection is not executed directly. So PBO is done, PAI is done. Now again, start of selection is directly not executed. So you can understand that how actually the events are called. So as soon as I execute the transaction, PBO is called. As soon as I give some input and try to see the output of that report, PAI will be called, which means add selection screen will be called. Now this is also not called as of now. If I hit F5, now it will go and actually go through the other events, like see, now it went to the report statement. This will help the system to see that what is going to be my page length. So it basically comes to know that it's going to be 8, and then this is basically allocated for footer. So system will first come here, and then if I hit F5 again, now system will go to startup selection. So system checks if this radio button is X. So obviously it checks. If you do an F5 here, now it will go inside. Again, there are two things. If I do a F5 here, it will get inside. So for now we will do F5. So I did F5, it went inside the subroutine. But had I done F6 there, it would have directly skipped that statement. But obviously this code would have been processed. So we'll show that. We'll just give a demo on that also. So here you are seeing that we have a select query where we are trying to fetch the data based on this criteria. Sorry, not this one. Based on this criteria that you include these two values, and also you include the values which comes in between these two. So based on this criteria, system is going to fetch the data from MARA table. If I hit F5 now, you can see that this was, till now it was 0 into 3, now it's 3 into 3. If I double click, you can see we have 3 records here. Now at runtime, system gives me a facility to delete any record. Go here, click on the tools. I can delete a row. If you hit, so what I will do before that, I'll copy this data list for it. Demo purpose, okay. Click this one, delete this one. Yes. Now system also gives me a facility to append a new row. So it tells you that at which line you want to insert. So let's say I tell it 3. Sorry, no. Basically it's asking that you want to use a template, which means you want to copy this any of these lines just for the just to know that what kind of data can be contained. So okay, we'll discuss that also. If I don't do the template, it will copy a blank row, it will append a blank row at the end, and if I hit enter, I just inserted the same data which I copied earlier. Now again we'll see append row. If I use a template and then give the example of table row this, hit OK. So this row is basically copied here. You get a sample data and then you can do some modification. Let's say I write 6. So now this is a unique record. Now we have the option of insert row also. If I do an insert, it will ask that at which row you want to insert. Let's say I write 2, and then you want to use the template 1 as a template data. So you'll see that at second row, a new row is inserted. This is copied just for the help purpose. Give some record here. Now this. So this is how we insert or append or delete the data at runtime. Same thing we are going to do in our internal table operations also. This one, we'll do it later. Change row content, you already know we have to edit it and then everything. So append delete. Now delete table is basically, it will just delete it completely. It will free the memory. If I double click here, so I don't have anything now. And then you can go back to the previous statement also. So what I did, I just placed my cursor here because I know that my internal table is blank now. I placed my cursor here and I can do a shift F12 or debugger go to statement. So again I come here. If I do F5 again, I have 3 records. So I hope you got it till now. The other thing which I wanted to explain is, so I know that my size of RC is 0. You can write here also. So maybe while debugging, you want to skip this function module, and then, but the problem is system will go through it because previous operation was successful. So what you can do, you can come here, double click here. So now size of RC is 4. You change the values at runtime. If you do F5 now, it will skip this function module. But then we really didn't want to do it. So do debugger go to statement. Okay, I'll now the other concept which I will try to explain here is I'll go to this statement again. I'll come to this internal table. I'll delete my table, make it blank. Now, as I showed one option of jumping to the statement, now what I'm doing here is I'm clicking my cursor here. If I do a go to statement, now you will see that this remains 0, which means this particular piece of code was not processed. So at runtime, there could be a scenario wherein you want to skip a particular line of code and then you want to do your experiments there. So you can do the option of, you can use the option of go to statement. So this is how it works. So again, obviously we didn't want to skip this. So we'll go back here, and if I do F5, I'll get the data. Again F5. Now from here, okay. Now there are two things. If I do F5 in this function module, it will take me inside the function module. But since this is a standard function module, I really don't want to do anything. So once you come inside the function module, you can do a F7, which I was showing initially. So you'll come out of this, you'll be having the values here. Now the other option is, I'll go back to this statement again. I do a F5, I know this is a function module, but I don't want to go inside. I can do a F6, which means it will just execute this function module. To do that, I'll just make this blank so that you can get the real picture. And if I do F6 now, so it actually didn't go inside of this function module, but also it executed this and I got the results here. Again, I'll do a F5. So I'm right now I'm in a subroutine, even though it's completely processed and it's also taking me back to my main code. If I do a F5, I'll be going back like this, or if so. Okay, what I'm doing now, okay, let's hold it for here. Okay, so obviously this message is not executed. Now end of selection. The other thing which what I can do, I can select everything here, I can delete everything, or I can select a particular row and then I can delete that. That also we can do. And here we have options of global variables. You can see that what all global variables we declared in our top include, everything will come here by default. What all local variables we declared inside a subroutine, that will come here. Okay, now we are going to perform display data. So what I wanted to explain here is, if I want to process this display data but then I don't want to go inside, I can do F6. So I got my output. Now we will debug it again so that you can see the right things. So I'm doing a /h now. I'm doing a /h now. I came inside this, I did F7, I'm out of it now. I do F5, I know that there is a value in this, so this message won't be processed. Now, till now you are okay, right? So now I know that how we fetch the data. I can do F6, I'll be having my data here. So IT underscore Mara will be there, date 1 will be there. Because these things already were processed here, I did F6, so I didn't go inside. I simply skipped this, but by executing, not by skipping the code. Now we'll go to perform display data. I'm doing an F5 here. If I simply do F7 from here, See, I'll get the output because I'm returning back. And if I do F5, I'll get the output. But then that was not our intention. So what we will do, /h again. Let's go inside that and then let's see what kind of loop processing is happening. F5, F5. We got the data, so we know how to get the data. F6. Now go inside the perform display data. Now you know that we have this internal table, we have this work area. In the internal table, we already have 3 records, and then I'm putting a loop here, which means the benefit of this, yeah, and as soon as you write something, the system would also write the header of report. So you have to be very clear that top of page event will be triggered whenever you use a write statement. So inside this, we were using a write statement just to populate the headers, which means material number, date, and created by. So that kind of headings we try to populate. At the same time, system also executed this header of, this header. We'll go back. Now we came back here again. So basically you should get the flow here. Someone might ask you that when top of page would be triggered. So whenever you use a write statement, it will be triggered. Now we came to the loop. So now we have 3 records here. So the loop is going to run for 3 times. If I do F5, so we have the option of site abx. So you can see that it's 1. Site abx 1 means now we are talking about the first record. So earlier this work area was blank, but now we in this work area, you can see that the data from the first line is moved to this work area. And then we can use this work area to do any operation. For example, as of now, we are just writing the details of this work area like this. So we are writing these details. So directly internal table we cannot write. So we have to write the work area. We have to write each and every content one by one. So to do that, we have to use a loop. I do F5, and obviously this we can skip. So first record is over. Now if I go back, again F5, we can see that site abx is 2 now, which means we are talking about the second record. Second record is now moved here, 17 and then 18. Skip this. And then as soon as our processing is completed and all the records are finished, written on the output, then system will trigger the end of the page, which means my page is completed basically. So this is how it happened. Execute. Now we came out and then we got the output. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8th line. 8th line is our footer, but then because this one is the 9th line, so system triggered a new page. System considered this as a new page. So because this page is not yet completed. Why this is not completed? Because we allocated 8 lines there. So we allocated 8 lines here. So system has to wait for 8 lines. Until unless those 8 lines are not written, then it won't trigger the footer. So this is how we debug a normal program. So now you know that F5, F6, F7, F8, okay. Operations on internet. Now I'm executing this program again, just we'll see some other things also. Now we have 3 records in this. I can download this record in an Excel sheet at runtime. Save to local file. Desktop iTab save. This is basically useful when we are having lakhs and lakhs of records at runtime. So what we want to do, we want to download it in an Excel sheet, and then we want to analyze that what exactly is happening, which is the problematic record if that is there, at which basically which index that is there. This is how you download the data from runtime. Okay, the other thing which we should know here is now we want to know the concept of breakpoint and watch point. So breakpoint is basically a place where my code would break into debugging mode, which means I know that I don't want to go through this. I don't want to see these events triggering. I directly want to see that how the data is fetched. So what I can do, I can come here, I can select this, I can click on breakpoint, or if I do it again, it will be deleted. I can directly click my cursor here, then also it will be set, you can delete it. So for now I'm setting my breakpoint here. If I execute my report, if I select my variant, it executes. Not like this. So you can see that it directly came to this point. It didn't actually execute these events. Initialization at selection screen and also these things. If I do an F8 here, I'll come out of it. So this would also help me to understand few things now. How the events were triggered before the screen came in front of me. So what I can do, I can put a breakpoint in initialization, at selection screen output, at selection screen on, everything I'll put a breakpoint, so that my code would stop there. Now if I go back, so you can see as soon as I try to execute my program, so first I told you that by default load of program would trigger, which will just put all the code in the memory, which means code would be loaded in first instance. Now it will go and trigger initialization, which means whatever variables are there we want to clear it at runtime, it will just go and clear. So basically this is the sequence: load of program, initialization, and then add selection screen output. That is the third option. Maybe I can say load of program, initialization, add selection screen output. Now I'll go back to the statement debugger, go to statement. Now because this is not X, we will make it X at runtime. So if this is X, if I hit F5, we will go inside this. Now you know this screen is a structure, so it will contain the properties of the screen: input enabled, output enabled, intensified. You can make a field invisible, length, many things you can set here, color. Now the most important thing is here is screen name. So you have to keep on doing F5 so that you can see the actual things. So see, now it basically took the block. We have a block in our screen. Okay, we are not able to see the text of that block. Now we have the screen name as P matter. So it will basically pick all the elements of the screen one by one, and it will check if our code is going to do any modification there. So yes, our code is doing some modification here. If screen name is this, screen input is by default it's 1. It's enabled for input. We are making it 0 and modify the screen. Similarly, other fields also it will check. See, my select option. This is basically output. Sorry, high, low, and high. This is high. So what it's actually doing, it's basically going through all the elements of the screen one by one. Radio button 1, radio button 2, the text of that radio button, then the block is ending here. So this is how my process is completed. If I do F5, now the PBO basically of my selection screen is completed. Now it's throwing me out of here. If I do F5, this we can skip, and we have our screen wherein actually the PBO of the screen was triggered. This was made disable before it came in front of us. If I unselect this, then the screen would be loaded again, and then it will do the same thing. See, initialization won't trigger again, but then rest of the things will. One second. Yeah. So now the screen was reloaded and it was made disabled. So you know the flow that by default it will do a load of program, then initialization, add selection screen output. Next would be add selection screen, which means PAI, process after input. As of now it was PBO, process before output, now it's PAI. So I will go here, I will select my variant. When I'm selecting my variant, again the screen would be loaded. So I will do an F8 now just to come out of it. So see, this is selected, and then next would be if I hit execute again. So now my add selection screen, that is PAI, is triggered. So it will go and check few things. If this is low, high, so obviously nothing is there. Now it's throwing me back. So irrespective of the sequence of the event you mentioned in your report, it will actually takes its own sequence. It will take its own sequence. It won't go via what you have mentioned in the report. So basically, even though this PBO is written below PAI, it doesn't matter. Now it will go and trigger the report statement. Basically, before start of selection, it will go to the report. So you can see where is our notepad? So start of selection. Now start of selection, and as soon as you see a write statement, then it will trigger top page. And then obviously it will trigger the end of the page. We skip that basically. So this is the real sequence of a classical report. Now, because it's an interactive report, so what we'll do, we will do a /h here. We'll try to debug the next level. Double click. Now you see, system took me to add line selection. After this, add line selection would be triggered. So this is your interview question. They might ask that when the cursor goes to the report statement. So basically, it goes to report statement when it triggers the start of selection. The sequence is load of program, initialization, add selection screen output, that is PBO at selection screen, basically PAI report is start of selection. Then if you use a write statement in between, top of page, then basically end of selection, then end of page at line selection for interactive report. Now it will go into the next level. We'll go inside this perform. Basically what it's doing, it's going to they make a T table and then trying to fetch the description. It will use a write. We are going back and you got this. Okay. Now when you are at the second screen, then you want to display some header there. So what you can do, you can use an event called top of page during line selection. You can delete all the breakpoints here, do a save, so all breakpoints are gone. Hit F8, go to program. See, this came now. Actually, it was not loaded in the memory zone. So this is how we give a header and footer on the next page. Footer would be only one, obviously. Header will vary from page to page. So this is basically about debugging. We know the sequence of events now, and then we also know how to debug a program. We know what is a breakpoint. Now there are two different ways of using a breakpoint. We'll just close this one because it's not linked to the memory now. And you can also see that every time a debugger opens in a new session. So this feature basically got added from ECC 6 onwards. So we'll go to my code again. To verse 38. Change this. Okay. Now, as of now, we were doing like this. So this is called a soft breakpoint. Now we can do like this, hard breakpoint, which means start of selection. What I can do breakpoint. So my report will break here when debugging. If I execute this, so you can see it directly came here. So it's as good as doing a breakpoint like this or like this. So at some time your program might not stop on a soft breakpoint, so you can try using hard breakpoint as well. There might be a scenario, for example, when you are debugging an RFC code or something, that time it might happen. The other way of doing this breakpoint is break my user ID is SAP user. So break SAP user. So instead of writing breakpoint, you can write break and your user ID, because this one is a better approach and your program would break only for you, not for anyone else. So that even if by mistake it gets moved to a next environment, it won't be a real problem. So it basically breaks here and then things will go on. So now you know breakpoint, you know how to debug a program. We'll also cover the concept of watch point. will take from 1009 to 1020. So just to increase the data fetch 10092. So by doing this, what we can do, if we save again, you can overwrite your existing variant. Save it, your variant would be overwritten. Now we have this. So if I go and select from here, it will fetch this. Basically, it should be 1020. Now I'll do like here. We'll go in the program. You know you have to skip this conversion exit. Whenever you see this, you can skip F5. F6. Display data. Now we have a loop here. Okay, let's skip the right. Now we have a loop here. We have 8 records here. Now I know that it will keep on going one by one, means 9, 12, 15, 16. It's automatically sorted. You can see. And then we can sort it when we are doing the internal table operation. We'll just let you know how to do that. Okay. So now I know that my loop is going to run for 8 times. And my loop is going to run for 1 by 1, means 9, 12, 15, 16, 17. But then at runtime, I might be having 1 lakh record. So I cannot do a F5 for 1 lakh times. Let's say my material number, which is having the defect, is basically at 20,000 line. So the option here, here would be, let's say I want to directly go to 6th material. I'll go back to my desktop. For one time, do a F5. Select your cursor here on the field for which you want to directly jump. Click on watch point and then give an additional condition here, which means WA_MARA-MATNR equal to this. So you are telling system to stop for the material 18. Hit OK. So watch point created means whatever you provided was good. Now if you hit F7, so you'll get a message that watch point reached. If you double click here, so basically you are at 1018. So this is how you set a watch point. If you execute, you'll come back. Now you see why this is coming 3 times, because same session was executed again and again, and obviously not like that, but then we increased basically our data set 9, 12, 15, then 16, 17, 18. So basically we have now 3 pages. System considered it as a 3 different pages, one page having 8 lines. So this is the concept of watch point. So you know a breakpoint, you know a watch point. The other thing which we will discuss here is, if I select this one, so you get an information message this. So in SAP, sometimes you will get a pop-up message. So how do you debug a pop-up message? So what you need to do, you need to create a notepad file like this. In that you mention a function. So whatever we are doing, that would be a function. Command would be /h, title would be debugger, type equal to system command. So basically it's a system command. So what you need to do, you create a file like this, function command /h, title debugger, type system command, save it on your desktop, drag and drop it to that pop-up. If I drop it here, this is not a good example. Let's try to see some other example. Let's see the standard transaction MM03. Now if I hit enter, it gives me this pop-up. Now if I want to do a /h here, you see this is disabled, so I cannot debug it. But if I want to really debug it, what I can do, I can drag this notepad file, come to my screen. What is it? Drop it here. select some issue in the file. Okay, 1 second, let me just confirm the file details. I'll be back in a second. Yeah, so there was a minor issue in the file which I have rectified now. So it should be like this: function, command this, title this, type this. I just forgot to put these brackets here. Now I'll go to a scenario where I get a pop-up. If I hit enter here, I get this pop-up. I select some views, but then I cannot debug by putting a /h here because it's now disabled. So what I can do, I can drag and drop this file to my pop-up window, and you can see that debugging is now switched on. If you hit OK, you'll get into debugging mode, and then you can do your debugging here. So this is how we debug the pop-up window. So I think I would say our debugging. Okay, so this is one way of debugging background job, and then debugging a background job we will look into later when I'm discussing about background job. The other way of debugging would be, for example, you have some RFC function module, RFC debugging. Okay, when we will use this RFC calling, that time we will see the debugging. So now I would say the basic debugging is complete. We also know that how the events flow in SAP. Uh, background jobs too. Okay, yeah, so these things will take up in the next video. I'll try to prepare one more video today. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything yesterday due to weekend, and then I had some other activities. So we'll try to prepare one more video today at least, so that we can finish our these three things at least, and then we will schedule this our report in background. So that would be another one complete session on background, so that we will see later. So I think we are good for today, and then I'll be back soon. Thanks for uh, thanks for your time, and then see you again.